talking about playing, playfulness, and the importance of it and how we lose it as we grow in age. We talk a lot about adopting the roles and expectations of society and the things we put on ourselves to be mature in the first adulthood. And it's ironic, Joe, it's like intrinsically tied to our childhood. What we experience in childhood dictates how we go about our first adulthood, and then we hit the second adulthood, and the challenge is to shed those roles and expectations. And one of the great ways to do that is to get back to play. And I'm not talking about competition here either, although whatever gets you in the moment. But just like, remember when you were a kid and you just made shit up? You ever watch kids, on a playground? They invent a game. Oh, you throw them a tennis ball. If five kids are sitting around and you throw a tennis ball in the middle of them, they'll make up a game. They'll have these rules. That's how baseball was created. That's how all the sports were created. People when there were no rules, and they just started doing, and they made it up as they went along, and it became a thing. The multi-billion dollar sport of NFL football started with people screwing around with an oddly shaped ball on a field. Shit, this ball sucks. It doesn't even roll. What do we do with that? I guess we'll have to throw it. All right, if you catch it, it's just play, man. And so getting back to play, and Carl Jung had this moment. He talks about it in his memoir, Memories, Dreams, Reflections. A time in his early adulthood when he was going through a period of intense confusion, inner turmoil, and he felt directionless and disconnected from himself. And we kind of covered this in the last episode. All the journey I've been in, my 4 months of freedom, in air quotes, and Jung experienced this, and he just embraced it and went through it, and he found himself near the edge of a lake. And he just started instinctively picking up stones and little chunks of earth. And he just felt this impulse to play with them, just like when he was a child. And so without judging or analyzing it, he just began like building these little villages and arranging stones and patterns and constructing little towns. He had no idea why he was doing it, but he allowed himself to be absorbed in it. Like a trance-like state. Again, remember when you were a kid and you look up and it's been hours, and you're like, I don't even know what time it is. I think I'm supposed to be home. I might be in trouble. I've been playing. And so when Jung experienced this, he came to realize like this playful act of building with stones allowed him to reconnect with parts of himself that had been buried beneath layers of adulthood, rationality, his roles, his expectations. And so by like allowing for this spontaneous, unplanned, unstructured play, he was accessing something deeper, his imagination, his unconscious, his connection to the universal symbols that he would later describe as archetypes, right? And so again, without play, without observing himself with no judgment, he wouldn't have come up with his greatest theories and principles. So, Joe, play is so important. And it's interesting because here I am in this place, and I know I sort of like need play. I need more play. I need to get out and do things. But my mind, my analytical mind is like, what do I do? Do I join a league? Do I? I was like, motherfucker, go get muddy. Like go do the things that an adult is supposed to avoid, like get dirty, get cut. Just the simplest. I have wounds on both my hands right now, Joe, because like when I'm like around, I tried to fix this yard lamp the other day, and I chinked my thumb with the pliers, right? And I had this paper cut yesterday, and it just like bled all day. And I'm like, this is awesome, man. I'm wearing 2 Band-Aids right now. I'm fucking because it reminded me I'm using my hands. I'm not trying to avoid injury. I'm not. And just the simplest thing of using your hands, using your body being in flow is a critical thing, but it's like in the middle, we have to like work to get back to those moments. They don't just occur naturally because we have so much responsibility, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, bro. And you know, it's funny what you were saying. Like you were just naturally like rattling your comments off. And like Hollis's quote, listen to this. The ego's need for control often masquerades as maturity.
Woo, damn. Boy, this guy hits it.
So he's literally talking about how this like excessiveness, excessive like seriousness in life
Yeah. Yeah.
is like it's reflective of fear rather than wisdom, right? And so so one of the things that I know, I'll give you an example, right? So me, my wife, my brother, his wife, my other brother, his wife, our kids, we all went to my cousin's on our side wedding in St. Pete Beach. Amazing wedding on the beach. It was awesome. And you know, there's all these extra families there and all that stuff. And you know, there is a big, nice sized wedding. And so now the DiRoma family were participators. We're front row sitters.
Yeah.
We're hand up when questions, it opens for questions. We're the golden retrievers of life. Okay. It's all kind of like just almost just weaved into our DNA almost, right?
Yeah.
So after dinner, well, what happens at weddings after dinner and the speeches? Well, they turn the music on and the dance floor is open. And the DJ always says, hey, all right, let's get the party started. And quite often, you'll just be sitting there and that dance floor is looking quite empty.
Yeah.
Not the DiRoma clan. We're the first people on the dance floor, cutting up the rug, having a good time, doing our own thing.
Yeah.
And because again, it's a celebration.
Right.
And we're not sitting there worried about what everyone else in the room is thinking about in terms of what we look like while we're
Right.
on the dance floor. We're
Right.
there dancing, having a grand old time
Feels
for our
good.
cousin, and it's
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
And we're just, you know, song after song. You know, of course, it's wedding music too.
Yeah.
So it's like Prince and it's freaking Bee Gees and it's Cool in the
Earth, Wind, and
Gang.
Fire.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like all this. But that's the story that came up for me when I read that quote because everyone else is, oh no, I don't do that.
Yeah.
No. And it's like, well, why don't you do that? Well, you know, this isn't homecoming. I'm not. It's like, well, no, really what you're telling me is that you're terribly, terribly afraid to go out there and be fully yourself
Yeah.
and enjoy the moment and participate in your own life because you're going to sit over on the sidelines. Last
Sure
time
you.
I checked, you're not in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm just not like that. Okay, that's fine. Well, then, you know, okay, go be like
The
that.
thing
Right.
that
But again, it's like so much, so much of that experience and that moment of play created a huge connection and um, was essential for psychological health and the fact that it was deeply imprinting that moment, that memory of joy for our
yeah.
family,
Right.
right? And I don't think that people really realize that in that moment, intellect is not involved.
Exactly.
Right. And so we put so much emphasis and so much pressure on intellect that that's the only way that anything's ever achieved or gained or
Right.
whatever, or that's where real wisdom is found.
Right.
And it's like, well, how wise is it to sit on the sidelines of your life compared to getting up out of your seat,
Well,
even
it's a,
maybe taking those shitty shoes off you got on for the wedding party.
it's an energy exchange. At the end, when you have a party at your house, there's a tendency to want everything perfect, and like Martha Stewart's on her way, and it's like, let's survey everybody tomorrow and ask them which snacks were out and what the color theme of the living room, or say, did you have fun? And if there was dancing and music and spontaneous shit that wasn't planned and games broke out, they're going to say that was a great fucking party. It's like the great Maya Angelou thing. People will not remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel.
Oh
People
yeah.
want to feel good. And it's on the sort of wedding dancing note, I am what I call myself in those situations, Mr. Permission, because I can't help about the shape I'm in. I can't sing. I ain't pretty, and my legs are thin. And so I'm not a good dancer. I can't sing. None of that stops me. I'll be the first to fucking do it because I'm not good about it at it, but willing to do it gives everybody else permission who was actually kind of good at it, but was feeling nervous and judged. And they're like, oh, I'm better than that. And dude, at my own 40th birthday party, I remember it was at a VFW hall or like an American Legion or something, right? And I wanted to get the dancing going. And I said to the DJ, I said, please play Beat It. And I was the only guy. And I just started dancing foolishly. And next thing, 25 seconds later, the dance floor was full and everybody was having a fuck. It just takes some permission. And you're right, dude. The hardest thing is like in your mind. And I feel bad for people. I was like that as a teenager, as a young adult, would never dance. I was so self-conscious of how I would look and all that. But man, once you get in the practice of letting go and just feeling the moment, there's nothing like it in the world. I think that is whatever's on the other side of this crazy little reality we're living in right now. I think music and dancing is our connection to what life in our spirits really want, and hopefully that's what life is like somewhere else. Because it just feels so fucking good, dude. It's letting your mind get out of the way and let your body move, dude. It's just the best thing.
Well, then the other aspect is on the other side of it, to look at it a little bit differently is then, like most things, it brings a question up, right? Brings a
Yeah,
question to the surface. Okay, well, what psychological defenses are being indicated
yeah,
as a result of this resistance to it?
right.
Because if I'm so resistant to dance at a wedding where half of the event is on the dance floor,
Yeah.
well, then why? What is it that's surfacing for me that's
And
creating that
what
resistance?
am I protecting? Yeah,
Right. And most likely, it's probably fear people will think less of me.
yeah,
So, but again, so like I I don't know about you. It's incredibly difficult not to even dance in my chair if Michael Jackson is on.
oh
Let's
man,
just be very clear about that. And if you're, again, he's like the king, right? But getting back to the point that you raised in terms of, young, just instinctively going back there. One of the things that we talked about in earlier episodes, Kevin, about with Hollis in terms of the middle passage with the transition from childhood to first adulthood, but then first adulthood into second adulthood with midlife is there then begins to be this propensity for us to begin to look backwards and say,
Mm,
damn, why did I stop writing? Or why, why did I stop playing soccer? You know, I really loved that. That really brought a lot of joy to my life. Why did why did I stop reading comic books or, you know,
yeah.
whatever it is,
Right.
it's like, why did I end up stop doing that stuff? Was it
Right.
because I just began to take myself too damn seriously? And I'm grown up now and that's just for kids.
Right.
Did I just get too busy and I wasn't willing to prioritize the things that are really meaningful to me because I took on such a strong role as the provider, as the husband, as the father, as the, you know, all of these things that then there was no time left for me.
Right.
What was it? Right. And so the problem that arises when you don't have any type of play in your life is quite often too, it can be very void of creativity.
That's right.
And one of the things that I've really been zeroing on lately is a guy named George Land. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him.
No.
But George Land was a guy that did research with NASA with children to try and they wanted to try and determine essentially, okay, what is a genius
Mm,
and how can they begin getting the best people in certain positions
right.
because they wanted people that had creative solutions to solving the biggest problems that they were facing. And then, okay, it's like, how can we secure that talent?
Mm, very
By
early in
what
life.
what analysis and what assessment you come up with for us to determine that, right?
Right.
And so what he discovered was is that at the age of 5, if you had to guess, Kevin, from his research, what percentage of children were in this creativity study, what percentage of children scored at genius level creativity at the age of 5?
I'm gonna say 40%.
98%.
Wow. I thought I was going heavy on 40. Wow. 98%. That's incredible.
By the time they were 10, it was down to 40, I believe.
Wow. Having
And then it slowly went down
yeah, because life's
all the way
kicking the
to like
shit out of you
1%.
and you suddenly become conscious of
No, educational system.
uh well, I mean that's yeah. Design
Educational
yeah.
system. He says creativity is not learned, but rather unlearned.
Damn. Yeah.
So the really big thing is that we place so much emphasis on intellect
Right.
rather than creativity. But in reality, it's creativity that solves the biggest problems. Imagination solves the biggest problems that we're facing in our life. And quite often, right? And this is how I look at it, because this is from my personal experience, is that when your work becomes play,
Yeah.
there's no difference in your life. Right. So when I'm doing this with you, or I'm working with Dan, or my team, or I'm working with Allie on our business,
Yeah.
I'm not like, oh my God, I have to get through. I'm not saying that there's some elements of that sometimes because you're working with people, but the majority of the time,
And there's deadlines, yeah.
it's work is play. And there is no like
And the be-
start, there's
and the
no
best work you ever do will feel like play and playfulness.
right.
Uh I just want to go back to that real quick because the, I think it's like survival of the strangest going back to that study because the education system is designed to create worker bees,
Right.
not to inspire genius or nurture genius. And
Right. Right.
if you appear to be some kind of genius, you will be typecast, and you'll either have to be young Sheldon, or you're or you know, the creative people and high intellect people often, they don't fit in, obviously, but they're also like, they're unconcerned with hygiene or fashion, or you know what I mean? But then look at the people that we praise and who, become billionaires in it's not a system, it's not a path that you follow. Somewhere in there is rebellion of something. And yeah, maybe they're, sociopaths in their own way and all that shit, but to achieve the true leaders of the world, either excelled on the traditional path in through unbelievable discipline and determination, or they said fuck it all, and I'm going to be playful and see what comes of this. And one thing led to another, and they gained the wisdom and education they needed to facilitate what they were creating through play, and turned it into world changing shit.
Mm. Yep.
But the educational system is not designed to get you there.
No, no, no. I mean, what's is it Rockefeller, right? He was creating a nation of workers, not thinking.
Right.
And the large, he was an incredibly large donor, um,
Funding the schools. Yeah.
funding General Education Board, right? In the early 1900s. So I think we all know what that means. But again, so the coolest thing though, I think is that yes, like there's something to be said about maturity. But I just know more than anything else that there are things that I take very seriously, and I take life very seriously as well, because I know what a gift it is for me, and it should be that way for anyone. But I don't take myself
Yeah.
too seriously, you know? And one of the things that I've discovered, that's been incredibly powerful for me, the last 7 years since I've been embarking on this like midlife journey, is the productivity of non-productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this line of thinking that I'm a guy that needs to live and die by his calendar. Like my life is basically, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And some people may find that very extreme. Maybe they even will say, well, Joe, that sounds pretty serious to me.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also within all of that, right? Running multiple businesses, married, teenage kid, about to have a small, a baby, all of these things. It's very important that if those things are there, I don't have to think about them in my mind. So my mind is freed up from the worry or concern about
Missing something.
missing
Yeah.
something or trying to remember something, right? Einstein famously said, I don't even know my own phone number because I can go look it up in a phone book. I want this reserved for brain power and thinking.
Right.
But the big thing is that I do have gaps of time that I let off the gas on more of the regimented all day, every day schedule. Then it's okay. Now there's these times of unstructured time.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you
and
talked about
those,
that trip you took out west. Did you
right,
purposely not schedule a thing, or were you
bro.
still needed that to live?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, every single year I do a life diagnosis.
Mm.
I've been doing this since 2018. Okay. It's from my friend Ron Maholtra, great entrepreneur. Okay. And what it is you rate your level of satisfaction in all these different domains of life, one being highly dissatisfied, 10 being it's exactly the way I want it and I'm highly satisfied. In that assessment, I realized that my physical environment was highly disturbing me and I was highly unsatisfied. We were living in this small little ass apartment together. both basically working from home. I literally was uninspired by working at a desk in my damn bedroom, no room, just it was just, and I'm like, you know what? 2 weeks later, I planned a 2 week trip to California by myself. Of course, I talked, with Allie about it, but, and, I'm blessed with a super freaking amazing supportive wife that's like, yo, go do that. And it was also in the time where I have a 5 week period in the summer where my son goes to stay with his mom for the first half of the summer. So it's also a very hard time for me because my son lives with me full time. So it's like, I'm
Yeah.
also like this time where I'm like, this sucks. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to use it wisely. Most of the time I just work like a maniac. But so I'm like, I'm going to head out west. And I went to Tahoe, Yosemite, and Sequoia.
Mm.
Would work during the day, work on my book. I got my outline for my book generated while I was out there. And I would either go hiking in the morning or I would go hiking at night. I had, other than that, zero plans. It was just work, hiking, and sitting in the woods by myself. So I cannot tell you how transformative that experience was and expansive
Yeah.
for my whole entire life. One, getting into wilderness. I'd hike for 4 hours, Kevin, and I'd never see a person.
Wow.
I'm just in there by myself.
Yeah.
Uh, Two, it was nice to be at a point in my life where I didn't want to be anywhere else except right where I was. And I enjoyed the company that I was with, which is a very special thing for somebody that was my own worst enemy for 13
Yeah.
years, right? So, okay, there's that.
Right.
But then there's also the power of nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's this obsession in our society with productivity. And listen, I'm a huge productivity nut. Okay. I mean, I was head of productivity for a $600 million organization. So I know all about productivity and efficiencies and
Yeah.
generating whatever I can to save more time, make more money, and whatever. I get that.
Yeah.
But with this principle that I just dropped, the productivity of non productivity, I don't think that it can be measured with worldly finite measurables other than just if I could tell you what it did for just my well being as a result of being in that space by myself and experiencing that and the smell and the sights and the beauty and the connection um and I wasn't doing anything.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, how much am I making a point today, whether it's play or whether it's non-productivity? How much am I making a point to focus and saying, well, how much growth happens in non-productive moments?
Right.
Right? Because for me, I did all of the intrinsic work that I possibly could and always do that
Right.
since 2009 because all I ever wanted to do was to be able to sit in the forest by myself
Right.
and be okay. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like
And there's
so Joe, you're saying that your biggest achievement was nothingness?
yes. Holy
And
crap.
I'm like, yeah, because with that, I can do anything and be anything. I can
That's
do.
right.
I'm limitless at that point, and I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not placing. I'm not placing any worldly
Right.
or finite assessments on what it is that I
Right.
have going on.
Just yeah. And I think nature is essential to those moments of just existing because when you focus in on what's around you, uh, you start to marvel at what's around you when you're in nature. It doesn't have to be the world's oldest oak tree or whatever. I mean, I go on my back porch and I just listen to the birds and the cicadas and the way that, and it's fucking unbelievable. It's fascinating. I watch the clouds go by and I go, wow, whatever this reality is, I am in a perfect ecosystem right now. The gravity, the weather, all of it. And yeah, things are getting weird, and especially here in Florida. But in moments when the weather's right and you just like, this couldn't be more perfect. And then go touch shit. Uh, touch leaves, climb a fucking tree. It's okay. Yeah, you might fall. All right. Just try not to land in your head. But yeah, we talk about this is a big thing. Kids don't climb trees anymore.
Oh,
Dude, when I'm in a when I see parents with a kid and they're letting it be dangerous, I'm like, that kid's gonna be fine. He's climbing on shit, doing all the things that nervous moms go, oh no, 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 no. Oh my god, baby. Those mothers who chase their kids around the playground. Kyle, get down from there. Kyle, get down from there. Fuck. Kyle's trying to figure some shit out about what he can do and what he can't do. So then it's like now, but like, so the second adulthood, we have a chance to get past all those little nervous twitches that adults gave us and these lanes we're supposed to fucking be in. But we got to unlearn all those things, like you just said, the judgments of, oh, don't do this, and people will think that, and no, that's not me. Who are you? Just say, I don't know who the fuck I am. That's not me. I don't dance. So no, I wouldn't do. Well, maybe close the blinds and put on some fucking earth, wind, and fire. And if you can stand still, then yeah, you're one of the weird fucking 11% of people who don't respond to music in the world. And I'm sorry for that. That sucks. But you'll find your outlets and enjoyments other way. But 89% of people feel music, and you're probably one of them. And just like let go, and there's a your environment, your movement, and your changing your consciousness, and it's about letting go more than anything. I think that's the theme we're on to here. Letting go and seeing what happens with no expectation and no judgment on yourself.
yeah. Young is famously quoted as saying, "Show me a sane man, and I will cure him for you." Because he talked about how he really like wanted to illustrate it, how just that strict like rationality and seriousness can actually be a form of pathology, man.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like, okay, man, like settle down, right? But so the other thing that surfaced for me too was like was the quote from Hollis. And he says, what looks like play to the outside world is often the most serious inner work. And it's like what everyone saw was this trip to California.
Yeah.
But oh, and I'll bring this up. I went by myself.
So lots of questions.
Oh, dude, I was getting text messages. I was getting Facebook messages.
Uh,
Hey, are you and Allie okay? Are
really?
you and your wife all right? Is everything okay with Damien? Because God forbid you go and do something as an individual.
Yeah. That's it. How dare you?
Right? Yeah. And so when you're breaking out of those societal norms, you better be ready, man.
Yep.
You better be ready. Because there is there was even family as well
Yeah, sure.
that were messaging my wife and reaching out to my wife and expressing very, very strong opinions about what Joe was doing
Mm.
and how he was doing it. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they were on the inside, right? Where everyone is. It's a lot easier to judge and criticize than it is to actually have some sort of critical thinking,
Oh, oh yeah.
right? So,
Or ask a question or be curious about it.
hey, what do you think of, what do you think about that? What do you, well, Joe's gonna go do that, and I think that's what's most important for him is in his growth and his individuation process, and I'm supportive of that. And then it's like, and I'm gonna go to Taos, New Mexico for a couple of weeks by myself, and then but it's funny, no one was reaching out to me when,
Nice.
she was doing what she's doing. It's like, oh, because there's different cultural norms in
Right.
terms of roles, right? So
Saturday
again,
or Sunday, and
be
yeah.
careful of the play too, right? And just knowing what you're doing and being confident in your own way of being. And when you're doing that, it's gonna cause disturbance, right? Because it's gonna poke and prod and expose uh people to their own inadequacies,
100%. That's such a
right?
oh, dude.
So for me, it's like I'm just way more focused on what's best for Joe,
Yeah.
and then that will spread to everyone I'm around,
Exactly.
right? And so like we can sit here and have an entire conversation like we did last episode about your 4 months to freedom. Just in case was wondering, it's not 4 months of freedom. It's 4 months until
Two
he
freedom.
got to freedom, to
Right.
freedom,
Yeah.
and the grief that was involved in that. But this episode, we're talking about the playfulness and the role of joy, right? And
Yeah.
so, as much as sadness and as much as grief and reverence and meaning and all of these other emotions are vitally important to dealing with these difficult circumstances of life, joy is just as important.
Yeah.
Because, like Kevin said, and I'm the same way, once he got up and started dancing to his music that he loves and having a good time, he shifted something within himself, right? Because if emotions reside in the body and thoughts reside in the mind, then if I begin shifting my body and have that emotional experience of music, well, now it's going to send emotional triggers up to my mind, and my thinking's then going to be changing, right? So it's like sometimes I need to stop thinking my way into how I need to behave, and I need to start behaving a certain way to change my thinking, right? So
Yes.
that shift like gets me going. Now, pleasure for me also serves as a humongous psychological purpose, right? Because again, if I didn't go out there and enjoy myself, right? Then maybe it would have been a very different experience for me, right? But I just know, and I'm a big believer in gratitude, and that it's a choice, and that it's an action, right? And gratitude is an action. But I also believe that gratitude is like the staircase to joy. So like I don't just get right to joy unless there's like the burning bush, right? Like
Yeah.
I get to joy through gratitude. And so when you were talking about when you go outside, I'll give you an analogy. At my old place, we lived there for 6 years, and there was this pond right outside my front door by the sidewalk. When I would walk out, you look at immediately at it. Every year, year after year, ducks, ducklings, springtime. And there would be times that I would, and this is still when I worked in the office. So I would walk out my front door, and sometimes I would walk out and I just stand there, and the ducks would be quacking, they'd be swimming around. The oak trees are all right there. And I'd sit there and stare at, like you said, this majestic landscape of nature. And I felt overwhelmed. I felt a strong sense of gratitude. And it was just, it was beautiful. And I felt so connected. And then there would be other days that I would walk out of my door and I'd look at that same exact thing, and that duck would quack, and I'd be like, you shut the fuck up, duck. The only thing that changed, right, was my intrinsic nature,
Yes. That's a great word.
my spiritual condition. That's it. The
Yeah.
ducks didn't change. The pond didn't change. The tree didn't change. The green grass didn't change. None of that changed. And I became aware of this. And that's when I really began to learn and understand that I have a choice at what I see.
Yes.
That's my choice. And so much of my path to joy is determined on what it is that I choose to seek. And if I choose to seek the beauty in the ducklings swimming, the reflection off the pond, the beautiful green grass, and this beautiful smell of those oak trees and all of that stuff, then I get the consequences of seeking that and everything that comes along with that. And
Yeah.
then conversely, if I come out there and I'm like, shut the fuck up, duck,
Right.
I get all of the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And so there's my choice. And it has very little to do with anything other than what I choose to seek. It's just it's baffling to me that it's like,
Yeah.
wow.
I think this is I had similar experiences um at my last place with the church bells. There was a church across the street,
Yes.
and I was in a place where I think I was seeking so much control because I felt out of control about certain things.
Ooh.
I would get so fucking annoyed with those church bells. I'm like, hey, I get it. Like on Sunday or maybe Wednesday, there's a service. I don't need to know it's 2 o'clock. I got a fucking clock right here. Dun, dun. And then a friend would come over to visit or something, and they would hear the church bells, like, oh my God, church bells. Oh, it reminds me of Europe. Like, you get to hear this every day. And I'm like, I'm ready to write a letter to that church and go, like, back it down with the fucking church bells. And I'm like, you know what it comes down to for me, Joe, is like it's an energy. One thing I started learning to do was just check in with my energy. Like, for instance, in traffic, a time when most of us are unconsciously battling life. This guy, I'm going to get ahead. You know, the asshole that passes you on the way to the red light so they can then have to brake hard at the red light, and you like roll up next to him and you're like, bro, like fucking chill, bro. Like, you knew that light was going to turn red. And so I just like, for me, it's as much of a feeling as a consciousness of me just going, oh wow, my vibration is super high and super tense right now, and this isn't going to help me get in. Because again, we talked about creativity. You have to be relaxed and you have to be letting go. And so I'm constantly sort of like, this sounds so woo, but like checking my vibration. And if I feel, you can feel physically when you're super tense and unconsciously trying to fight and change the world. And if you just go, okay, let's like picture like 3 layers. Let's just walk this down. And then, I'm in my car and I'm like, actually fucking sit back, you know, and roll, you know, and it just changes everything. And then that's when you avoid accidents, because you're now, instead of causing them, you're fucking actually seeing the shit that's going on in the movie in front of you. You're like, that guy's gonna, yep, he did. I'm glad I braked. I'm glad I saw that. Otherwise, I'd be, part of him right now. Um, yeah, checking energy, like you said about. It's so funny about the ducks, dude. How could you be pissed at the thing you marveled at the day before? And it's because you woke up and you let the world take over your being in that
Yep.
moment. And there's a moment that then you have a choice. Do I want to correct this? And like you said about gratitude, I love that. Gratitude is your staircase to joy. Um, when you become conscious of your energy, it just becomes a little second nature for you to check in with it. And it's amazing how easy it is to adjust it a little bit just by taking a second. You don't even have to do like, I'm going to breathe deep 3 times. You don't even have to do all this shit. It's like, if that helps you, great, but just be aware and make a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. My friend, he's no longer with us. Old friend of mine. His name was Hong Kong Ron. This is back in 2009. And he told me, he gave me this little pen and it was called Attitude of Gratitude. And it had a little, uh, like, what are they called? Fortune cookie thing, the fortune from the inside attached to it. Right. And it was this quote, and I'll never forget it. He says, the law of physics stipulates that no two objects may occupy the same space at the same time. So a heart overflowing with gratitude has no space for fear, resentment, anger, or hatred. So that's why I say when I make it a point to choose gratitude today, there's just no other space for other stuff to just come in and take
Right.
and take my energy, take my emotions, take my thinking, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to transition to our last point before we close things out because we're closing things out. But this is very, very important because just as I believe gratitude is the staircase to joy, I believe the key to unlocking the door to playfulness, especially not just in children, especially in adults, but just throughout life, is curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, somebody that I'm a natural, I think I'm just kind of naturally curious. I love to learn. I love figuring things out. I did once I got my ontological coaching certification, I learned to love to listen, which was a new concept rather than talking all the time. But all of these things, all of it is coming from a place of curiosity, wonder, awe, just total space of like, what is this? And so, for me, it's been one of those new found like journeys of, man, I remember like when I was a kid, I was way, way curious. And if you spend any time around little kids, that's why they're just always asking questions, right? And we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about George Land in terms of what the educational system dumbs us down in terms of creativity, but it also creates an addiction to answers
Mm.
because we're graded on the quality of our answers, not on the quality of our questions. Right. So it's like, okay, a curious person is not somebody that knows anything. They are
Right.
somebody that is sitting in a space of unknowing or of I don't know. And they're really open to letting anything unfold that's going to unfold. So I highly, highly implore to anyone that's listening, number one, don't take yourself so damn seriously. Start being very, very aware and intentional about having some curiosity in your life and start seeking out some stuff that bring you joy and that are light and that are playful. It could be the littlest thing, like, Kevin was talking about in the last episode, putting the posters from his Rolling Stone concerts up on the freaking wall. So it's like when you look at that, it's like it's light and brings you some sort of joy.
Go to Walgreens and buy a pack of army men and put them on your coffee table and have a battle. Seriously, it sounds so fucking stupid, but that's what you did when you were a kid and there was no judgment. And
But why does it sound so stupid?
Because society told us we don't do that after a certain age.
That's what children do.
That's what children
Because
do.
children are not human beings.
Oof. Oh, dude. Damn.
Even though that 98% of them are considered geniuses.
Yeah. Wow.
And you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for likes on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Please
I
validate.
want you to heart my Instagram photo.
Sad.
How we have it so twisted. Anyways, we're getting a little wild here, but again, discovering play in the second childhood of life or the second adulthood of life, especially in midlife. It's why you buy the sports car. It's why you take on new activities. All that stuff, that exploration, do it. But don't forget to be curious and don't forget to do the work internally as to why it is that you're seeking that stuff that's so meaningful to you at those moments, right? So, Kevin,
Dance like nobody's watching.
dance like no one's watching, especially when MJ comes on. And the best part is when you take off the terrible shoes from Men's Warehouse or whatever place you rented the tuxedo from, you're in socks, you can automatically do a moonwalk.
Oh, you can
all
moonwalk, you can slide.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Tell
Yes.
them about the newsletter. Tell them about the Substack.
Yeah, go to this Substack, just search it. If you haven't heard of it, it's just a really cool way to consume our newsletter and even maybe find some other cool things you're interested in. Go to just search Substack Man in the Middle show, and you'll also see it in the show notes wherever you hopefully you're uh, on our list and getting our updates. Please subscribe to the show. Just hit that little subscribe button. And if you're so inclined, we would love for you to leave a rating, maybe a short review. As Joe often reminds us, share it with people who you think could use it, would benefit from these conversations, want to be a part of these conversations. It'll spark conversations in your own life that will make things less lonely and confusing. And then we always want to hear from you at info@maninthemiddleshow.com. And that's a wrap on this episode, Joe. A great one. Really enjoyed this topic.
Dude, really good one. And you know what the best part about it is? This is a form of play for you in midlife. So thank you guys for joining us while we're playing wide out in the open and expanding ourselves. So take care. We'll see you next time.